I think TikTok Shop will eventually overtake Amazon in sales one day.
Chase Chappell,
serial entrepreneur and marketer.
Founder of Chappell Digital and Surge.com.
What made you want to start running social media ads?
So I grew up in like the country lifestyle. My sister had married into wealth. All that changed after they got a divorce, and I found myself back in the boy behind like the cattle guard. So I ended up applying and getting into a business school. I'm going into my sophomore year, was already approaching 6 figures. My clients are calling me while I'm sitting in class. We're paying you to run our social media account. Are you gonna do the work or are you gonna study in school? So I ended up dropping out of that academy.
What's your advice for someone in my position and also just for people that are listening?
Let's say you're doing $5,000 a month right now. You got a little bit figured out, but you don't know how to go to 20 or 100. First thing I do is, so I go into this huge boardroom. There's VP of marketing, the CMOs. And so at the very end of the meeting, one of the VPs leans back in his chair and he goes, "Okay, Chase, you look like you're in diapers." Their agency had 45 people. I had me and 2 other people to compete with them. Within the 90 days, we broke every record in 7-Eleven's franchising business. If you're gonna launch a Shopify store, is the website good enough? Do we just upload a basic product or do we need to brand it? Do we need to have the mission behind it? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. If you're listening to too many people, you're going to analysis by paralysis, and that's a horrible state to be in. Agencies are notorious for burning people, making false promises.
What's your life advice?
You should ask, why did we do this on pretty much everything you do until you know the reason you do it.
Kickin' Ass, Taking Names podcast, and today we are here with a very special guest, Chase Chappell. He's done over $1 billion for his clients system-wide across 3 different companies. He has a SaaS company. He's got a company that's Chappell Digital, right? Running Facebook and TikTok and Instagram ads. And also the third company, which we're going to talk about, is which one is that one?
Training company.
Training, yep. Okay, so that's the last one, is the education and training, teaching and scaling with I believe you had over 10,000 students?
We've had a lot of students.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that today. So Chase, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a long time in the making.
Yeah. So
we're trying to get this scheduled.
Dude, we've been like, you've got the craziest schedule, dude. Like you're traveling and
I know, going to Europe next month. We met up in California by random at Ty's house.
Are you friends with we were at Ty Lopez's house. Are you friends with Jake Paul? I see you're always like in that.
I wouldn't say we're friends, but we went to a few of his boxing matches. That was a pretty unique event. So
yeah.
We were actually here in Arizona when it was Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva.
I regret not doing that because I was like, dude, it was like $25 or something for a ticket.
Yeah.
And I could have gone in and I probably could have met like 6 different people I could have got a
So we
with.
sat ringside, and I have Dan Bilzerian to my right. I have Sugar Sean to my left.
Yeah.
And I like, boxing stuff. And I just started getting into the UFC content, right? But I didn't know who Sugar Sean was.
Yeah.
And so I'm with Ty, one of our editors. He's like, "Oh, that's Sugar Sean." I go, "Who's that?" And I'm like looking at this guy, and he has like a rainbow hair.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what he does." And we started talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm retired." I was like, "You're retired?" I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "Nothing really." And I was like, "Okay." The night goes on. We start talking about like ads and stuff, just talking about going out in Scottsdale, just on a friend level. And then I kept asking him because I was curious, because people kept coming up to him, taking photos. I'm like, "Who's this guy actually, though?" And then I find out he's like, a top UFC guy.
Oh, you didn't know his name, so you couldn't Google it?
No, I didn't. I had never even seen his fight before.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anything to judge him off of or even know who he was. But then we all went out that night, Dan Bilzerian, everybody, and it was Jake Paul. We went to a big party. It was fun.
That's sick. Yeah, he just lost, but I think he'll come back.
I know, that was tough.
Yeah, that was a good, dude, he's a good fighter, and I think he says he didn't have an off day, but I think he had an off day.
That was an off day.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he's like, no excuse. He's just trying to be like cordial and like, proper.
Yeah,
but
everybody wanted to make that fight happen too.
Yeah, dude. So, so here's the thing. We're talking about social. You're in the social sphere. That's like what you're really well known for. You're known for you're like one of the heavyweights in terms of like, if we're going to use the same terminology of running ads, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, over $1 billion. Like, let's start with, how did you get into specifically like why social media and what made you want to start running social media ads?
Yeah. So, just from where I was in high school, I went to like a business academy. And if we take a step back behind that, so, I grew up in the rodeo. So I was the boy behind like the cattle guard and like zapping the cattle to get them to go out into the rodeo and get roped. So I grew up in like the country lifestyle, out acreage, farm area, very rural country town, didn't know anything about business or the big city at all. This is 6-year-old, 7-year-old me, right? And my sister had married into wealth. And that was like a big determining factor, like, because I went from, being in the rodeo and then all of a sudden being around, a totally different lifestyle that I'd never seen before. So, I'm over here zapping cattle. And then the very next day I'm visiting my sister. We're riding around in a Rolls Royce and I didn't even know what kind of car that was. Right. And I was exposed to this lifestyle initially. And I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing over here on like the farm hanging out with, at the rodeo? This is kind of nice over here. There's, nice people. There's nice fancy lifestyle, the cars, the traveling, going to all these different cities, being exposed to that. And then, being around the nightclub scene at 7 and 8 years old. Imagine that as a kid being in a nightclub, so my sister's ex-husband was showing me all this, right? I was going to the nightclub with him and he was showing me, hey, if you ever want to have a business, you got to learn every position in the company before you can actually have one. So I was sweeping the floors in this place, going to, Privé, hanging out with Nicki Minaj and all these different artists, right? Lil Wayne, Meek Mill was there. So I was meeting all these people at this young age. I'm like, man, every time I go back home, I was like, I don't know if I like the country, but this is kind of nice over here. It's fun, right? And one day around when I was, turning 15, all that changed after they'd gotten a divorce and that whole lifestyle kind of exited. And I found myself back in, the original position. I was like, man, I really want to get back to this. And so I started applying myself in business and started, all those things I was learning as a kid and being in that environment kind of like motivated me to, get back to those things. So I ended up applying and getting into a business school. I became the president of that business academy. So I ran, that private school as the president. I cut the ribbon for the school the guy's name was named after.
And this is a high school for people.
Yeah, it's a high school. It's a first year concept. It had never been done in Texas. So it's basically the school model was, the theory was, can we teach high school students how to start a business and will they become successful? It was a total first year concept. So we were freshmen going in. There was nobody above us in our class.
What city is this in?
So this was out in Eagle Mountain Lake in Texas. And it was about 50,000 square foot academy. And so they were basically teaching students and they brought in real world professionals who had business experience. And, I was in the school learning these things. And so I started getting into social media. That just seemed like something to do. Started managing, a social media page for a pool builder. That was my first client, paying a few $1,000s a month. And while I was in school, I started getting more and more clients. I'm going into my sophomore year and was already approaching 6 figures. And I'm like, my clients are calling me while I'm sitting in class going, Chase, what are you doing in school? I was like, what do you mean? They're like, we're paying you to run our, social media accounts. Like, you got to pick one or the other. Are you going to do the work or are you going to study in school? I was like, man, that is right. I mean, they are paying me and I need to be working on that. Why would I be in school? So I ended up dropping out of that academy. And a week, I dropped out 1 week before where I was supposed to be I was on the front page of the newspaper and the magazine for the school. And I was supposed to go shake the hands of all the parents of the school because I was kind of the poster child for that school already. And the president, the actual, principal of the school calls the counselors and they're like, where's Chase? And they're like, well, sir, with all due respect, the business program worked out for him. He dropped out. And he goes, what do you mean he dropped out? I get that it's working for him, but he has to finish school. And they're like, yeah, sir, we understand that, but we can't get a hold of him. And he's like, well, he needs to be here right now. You need to get a hold of him. And they couldn't get a hold of me, and I was long gone.
What did they end up doing?
I don't know. But they did call me years later and offer me a diploma.
Oh, that's good. That's nice.
I never accepted it.
There's a school I heard about in Austin, Texas. That's like called Alpha Schools.
Okay.
And they're doing the same kind of concept.
Yeah, it's getting bigger now. So, there's been a lot of success in the programs. Not everybody started a business, right? Yeah. A lot of it was make-believe. Most of the students were like, I'm going to go mine moon rocks in space, or I'm going to create this new medical device. There's a lot of fancy theory or fun, cool stuff that was exciting. But, I took the very practical approach. I'm like, I'm just going to make posts on social media for a pool builder.
Yeah. Yeah. There's because we're going to interview hopefully soon a woman named Mackenzie Price, and she does the Alpha Schools. So I might have to be in Texas. I don't know how far you are from Austin. What part are you in?
Dallas.
Dallas? Okay. Yeah,
Texas is very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And the taxes are good there. Everything's nice about Texas.
Yeah. I need to go too. I need to be there more often. So I'll be there. But with that being said, so then you started this agency at 15? Basically?
Yeah, 15. And by age of 17, I'd landed the 7-Eleven national franchise account.
How'd you get that?
Yeah. So a bigger agency, I was getting a bunch of results for a bunch of brands, and I got connected to this bigger agency. And I had somebody show them some of the case studies, and they're like, okay, that's cool, but like, you know,
So
is it legit? And his age is kind of concerning, you know, and they wanted to land this 7-Eleven account, but they didn't know anything about ads. They were a creative agency. And so I got introduced to them, and they were like, all right, we're going to let you go into the boardroom. You're not going to say anything, but if any ad questions come up that we don't know, you can answer them. And so I go into this huge boardroom. You know, there's VP of marketing, the CMOs, all the big, you know, guys at the 7-Eleven headquarters. And imagine a little 17-year-old kid, no beard. I'm about 40 pounds less than I am now. Super skinny. Looked like I was definitely 13 years old. And I hijacked the meeting. I was talking the entire time. And you could tell the other, like the agency that had brought me in were like, why did we let this guy come in here? He's going to run the deal. And so they kept trying to cut me off, but I just wouldn't stop talking. And so at the very end of the meeting, you know, one of the VPs leans back in his chair and he goes, okay, Chase, this all sounds very nice. Makes sense. Sounds good. I just have one question for you. And I go, okay. And he goes, you don't have to answer this, by the way. I go, all right. And he goes, you look like you're in fucking diapers. In the room, the air got sucked out of the room. You could just see on everybody's face, like, man. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, is this a question? And I go, 21. I wasn't even 21. I was 17. And he goes, you're young. And that was the end of the meeting. And everybody walked out and they're like, fuck, we lost that deal for sure. There's no way. 6 weeks go by and that guy gave us a pilot. And he goes, you have 90 days to outperform our current agency. Their agency had 45 people. I had me and 2 other people to compete with them. Within the 90 days, we broke every record in 7-Eleven's franchising business. It was the best year they'd ever had in franchising. Their accounting department and legal team, the marketing, you know, CMO guy was like, I don't believe this. There's no way, you know, this is like, this kid is actually doing this stuff, right? So legal came in, accounting came in, and they're like, it all checks out. The numbers are good. And then we got to keep their business, and we held it for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how old are you now, if I can ask?
25.
You're 25?
I am.
Jeez. Okay. So maybe you carry yourself like you're much older then.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I'll tell you this. So the age question is by far like the biggest problem, right? So I was losing deal after deal due to age. Even your results might be there, but it's a risk talking to a kid. At that age, you're considered a kid, right?
Yeah.
If you're in your teens. People aren't going to trust you in business. It's risky. And the age thing was killing me. And I was getting so mad about it. And by the time I had done the 7-Eleven thing, it was like the final straw in my mind because that embarrassed the hell out of me. So the very next day I went to Walmart and I walk into Walmart, I go to the men's hair section and it's like 50 plus of age losing hair. You know, take Rogaine, put it on the back of your bald spot. And it said, do not use on face. So I bought it and I just started lathering it on my face. It said, don't use it. I was like, maybe it'll work. And then within 12 weeks, I swear, I had a massive beard. And I never got rid of that beard because the age questions disappeared from that day forward.
It's actually really funny.
Man, it works. Every deal was a close after that.
That's hilarious. Okay. All right. Not the direction that I thought, but it's still very, very valuable information. So you decided like, okay, so you go from agency and then now you're going into like SaaS, right? Like you're doing so much, you decide to do SaaS. Like what's going on there?
Yeah, so we fast forwarded through the agency. It had been a few years. We launched a training company to train people what we did on the agency because people kept getting poached. From our training, it was working really well. Obviously, other companies wanted to bring in that talent. So I was like, man, maybe we need a training company. So we launched that. That took off and was like, you know, really successful. And then a few years into that, iOS hits, all this changes happen, you know, ad tracking goes to shit. Everybody's trying to figure out what do we do here? How do we fix our, you know, analytics? All that stuff's past now. But that's where the spark of, you know, the intro into SaaS and understanding software. I didn't know anything about software. I was like, man, maybe I can figure something out here and solve this issue. So we set out, we solved it. It's a Shopify app called Surge, you know, fixed the ad tracking issue, started going well. But, you know, there's big players in this space, Triplewell, Hyros, all the big names. And they were receiving, you know, 100 million in funding, 50 million in funding, Northbeam, you know, 20 million plus in funding. And it was like, well, that's a little hard to compete with when you're going up against a huge bag of, you know, funding here. So we started to pivot and we got more into AI. And so now we analyze Shopify pages. We'll recommend the exact app. We'll tell them what changes to make to get a better conversion rate. So that way, you know, they can be able to scale up and improve their site. That's going really great. Thousands of people a week are using that tool. It's completely free to use that. Our AI, we literally built the model based off of our training company and our own clients. So we took 1,000 clients, ran an AI model, designed it internally, and now it analyzes those stores.
Quick question. I know Hyros, actually, Alex Becker's company, they solved the ad tracking as well a little bit. What was the solution? I don't remember.
So really it's all tied back to UTMs and like privacy laws. With what happened was Facebook, was no longer able to, directly attribute based off of receiving somebody's first name, last name, email, purchase information. Apple's like, hey, this is a private, thing that, why does Facebook need to have this information? If somebody's shipping a product from their site and shipping it to the consumer, why does Facebook need to know every little detail about them? So Apple said, we're going to wall this information off. So all the data gets, tied back and anonymized. That made it a lot harder for Facebook to attribute. They got past all that and solved it on their own. You don't really need a tracking tool, to fully run your ads anymore. It's back to where it used to be.
It's kind of like you just target everyone, right?
Yeah. So their algorithm's in tune now. As long as you have good creative, you call out your audience, you can hit the market you need to hit. But that scene exploded. That's when everybody was entering. We entered, Hyros entered, Triple Well entered. Everybody was entering at that time. Nobody knew anybody in that space yet. It was very early days. And just the amount of funding in that space, it just made sense to pivot out of it. And iOS tracking, it wasn't like a long-term thing anyways, because the big, social media companies were figuring out a solution to it at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was, the entry point, and now we've pivoted out of that.
So what do you think of like the current landscape? Like, what are the opportunities that really excite you as someone who's like in the front lines of ads, all that? Like, what are you preaching? What are you telling people?
TikTok Shop. It's becoming the next Amazon. So TikTok wants to become Amazon, become the marketplace, become the place where consumers buy. You think of TikTok as like a place where you scroll, get entertained. Everybody is now wanting to get on TikTok Shop to sell because it's absolutely explosive. You have so many brands making hundreds of thousands of dollars, every week, every month, and having a lot of success. And TikTok's basically wanting you to have not only entertainment, but be able to shop on there. And what they're doing is they're literally undercutting Amazon in all the same ways that Amazon undercut all the other retailers in the space. They offered the lowest pricing, the fastest shipping. TikTok's doing the same thing, but imagine them doing it against the company who's the boss at it all, right? It's pretty crazy to think about, and TikTok's funding it all. That's the beautiful part about this. And that's why everybody wants to get on TikTok Shop as a business owner. TikTok is discounting products by 10, 20, 50%. So if you have a product that's $100 and you sell it on TikTok, TikTok might drop it to $50, 50% off discount. Somebody sees that and they go, oh, I'm getting this for half off. It's a great deal for the consumer. They start buying on TikTok saying they got a great deal. Well, the business owner gets paid in full as if they received that full $100. And TikTok's covering the bill. So they're acquiring customers to get people to really focus on that. And so it's a strategy for them, but it's benefiting businesses, it's benefiting consumers. And now you're able to get deals way better than Amazon, all on TikTok Shop.
And then are they utilizing Temu for that as well? Like, is Temu partnered with TikTok or?
Yeah, there's so many different platforms. You have the Dropshipping, you have Temu, you have Amazon. Now even Amazon is like, well, they're crushing it. We want to do a deal with them. And now you can list any Amazon product on TikTok Shop.
So they're deciding to collaborate rather than compete. Because
and so they talk about this big ban happening, but we have these huge corporate companies kind of securing the deal and saying, well, TikTok's blowing up. It's benefiting the economy.
Before they start,
there's billions of dollars being paid out everywhere. Government want to ban it. Trump's already changed his mind on it. Now he's, hey, I'm all for it again, right? And we have what? Both presidents, all the presidents right now, and the running up candidates getting on there. The very people who said they wanted to ban it, why are they on TikTok, right? So it's kind of, that whole conversation's kind of gone to the side, and TikTok's probably here to stay.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you then, you think it's a long-term thing? It's going to be.
There's just too much happening.
It's too big, right? Like, it's money, and I think nobody in the U.S. and any companies want to give up money.
It would be a pretty audacious, thing, and it's not popular. Who wants to see TikTok go, right?
Yeah. A lot of creators base their whole life on it too, and then they're like upset.
It would annihilate the economy for a lot of people.
What do you typically get asked? Like, what are people asking you when they ask you for advice? Like, what are some of the biggest questions that come up to you?
Yeah, in terms of like what we do with ads.
When people are asking you, typically your specialty with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so like a lot of people want to know about affiliates and onboarding creators to basically promote their brand. How do we get 1,000 creators? There's AI tools now. AI is a big thing. So we're leveraging bots and stuff to be able to onboard thousands of creators to promote the TikTok Shop. products. Doesn't cost any money on ads, and they're posting the product.
Are they
Creators
like
benefit.
existing SaaS platforms, or are you?
This is all on TikTok. Yeah. And then the AI bots are like SaaS, right?
Oh, okay.
So they're integrated. They'll do the outreach for you. You'll onboard the creator. Creators make money. You get paid. Everybody wins.
And then this is also in your training too, or?
Yep.
Okay.
So we train all these people on TikTok Shop, and then we talk about website conversion rate optimization, the affiliate outreach and onboarding creators, and then leveraging the Facebook ads. And essentially that's, the model that it will allow anybody to go from 20 to 100 to 100 to 500, 500 to a million, a month.
What do you tell people who are looking to grow or start an agency or grow an agency, and they're, they're like you when they were younger, but
Don't do it. It's a mess.
what do you
Agency
suggest?
life is horrible.
What do you suggest then?
Agencies, well, I'll talk about the background of agencies. Agencies are notorious for burning people, making false promises. There's a big, cause in this industry, and everybody's trying to make a quick $1,000 and they don't have the results to back it up. So everybody's getting screwed, being promised all this stuff, but really they're not fulfilling at the end of the day. And so, people are always switching agencies. It's a huge issue right now, right? So there's so many different models people use, performance-based or, percent of ad spend or a monthly retainer. But if the results aren't there at the end of the day, a lot of these people don't want to pay. But there's so many hustlers that come out of all these different courses that are promoting, hey, let's start an agency, or here's how to make a quick $10,000. But at the end of the day, it's grueling work. You're dealing with a lot of clients. Clients get upset if you aren't getting the results. And so ultimately, agencies maybe you can make a quick, a few thousand, get, your feet wet in the space, but ultimately it's at the client's expense when you're entering in that because there's so many young people just trying to figure it out. And it's very saturated.
What do you suggest is alternative, right? Because people still want to get into the space.
Yeah, I mean, if you really focus on results and client experience and just dedicate to one or two clients, it would make sense. Because you don't want to ruin your name, right? You only have one shot, and that's one thing you want to protect. And then you have, all this other stuff, which is e-commerce, getting into e-com. The dropshipping stuff is one thing, but if you build a legit brand, have a really, meaningful impact, have a mission behind your company, the product actually has a solution beyond just anybody else selling it, it's a lot more valuable and people care about it. The D2C e-commerce space is very valuable. So you can build a really legit business and have it scale very nicely if, there's a true meaning behind it, right? Founder's story. Why do people, connect with the brand? Well, the founder started the company because of XYZ problem. We came up with this idea that's why people love Shark Tank, right? Mm-hmm. It's very small business impact oriented. But those types of companies can exceed and scale rapidly just due to their story.
How do you think, you're saying so D2C brands, but if somebody wanted to start, do they you don't need to have and hold all of the inventory.
No.
So are you saying should people, let's say I just want to build a social media page.
Yeah.
I just built the page. And then, people also say oh, let's do pre-sales or let's run ads and let's connect it to a drop shipping. What's the easiest way to do it today?
Let's use clothing, for example. Let's say you're very artistic and have a very cool creative background and you have a cool mission behind your brand and people, resonate with the clothing that you have and the design you're dropping. You don't have to have all the inventory for that. You can use, a website like Printful that will auto-fulfill. You just upload your design and it's made to order. That's something you can get started in. It still has all the meaningful connections behind it and people resonate with it, but you're not having to go buy $40,000, $100,000 inventory items.
Do you think it's better for a new person to leverage everything that's existing, like Printful, and then
there's so many free tools out there.
Yeah.
Right. It's so easy to get started. Right. Shopify's $1 right now for their store just to,
if you were to restart from complete scratch and let's say you want to go e-com, because that's what you specifically have designed, with everything that that you've learned, what you've seen work, what would be the perfect formula?
Yeah. So, we literally are doing it right now. We just launched an e-commerce store. Literally took it from $0 to $1,000 in the first week. So we already know the model. So we, build out the website, put a brand behind it, put a meaningful connection to it, and branded the products very, in the D2C friendly space, fun, creative, exciting, going after a very specific audience, launched on Shopify in literally 1 week, first $1,000. So we're trying to do a challenge right now where we take that e-com store from 0 to 100K per month, just to show how easy it can be if you have the right steps.
Mm-hmm. And then you're going to build this into a case study or make a YouTube
it's just
video.
one more little case study.
What's the niche for that one?
So that's in the pet space.
Okay.
Yeah. Every niche is saturated, right? So there's no, you can find people go, what niche is good right now? What's the next hot thing? Usually the hot thing is, once it's hot, it's hot. Everybody's doing it, right? So it doesn't really matter what niche, in my opinion, you go into. Because there's always going to be somebody who does it right, and there's always going to be a lot of people who don't do it right. You just got to be really good and be a little bit ahead of everybody else when you enter into a space. There's so many spaces like the car industry. Who thinks they can enter into the car industry when you have Ford, Chevron, all these, big car companies? It'd be silly, but here comes Tesla, breaks through in one of the most dominated industries and is excelling, right? You got a Tesla, I got a Tesla.
Yeah.
Lots of people have Teslas now. But if you have a unique, background and have, new ideas you bring to the table, a little bit different, it's not gas, it's electric. Electric might be the future. As long as you have something with your product that, hey, this is where we're going, here's what it's about, you can break into any industry you want. You just got to be a little bit more savvy and think about how you're going to do that.
Okay. So then now you guys building that out and then you going on in the future, like what do you see? Just curious because you've obviously done really well, right? So you built your social profiles and you've advertised that this is what your flagship product is. What do you see is the trend for the future going forward?
I think TikTok Shop will eventually overtake Amazon in sales one day. I mean, that's definitely a given. I can see all the same signs that have happened in the past. It's a big call out, but one day you'll see a transition and Compass and everybody's going to be like, well, why didn't I do that? So we're very early stage right now. And, these offers TikTok is giving out, you're not going to be able to get free. TikTok's covering shipping for people. They're covering discounts.
These are limited.
This is cash you can grab from them. They're giving it away.
Someone like a rebate or whatever it is just to get people on the platform.
Exactly. So that kind of stuff isn't going to last forever. So you're getting that little golden ticket to get introduced. But one day it will overcome all that. And what happened? Amazon goes, well, our fulfillment fees are going up. Or you got to pay more for shipping. You got to pay, more for this to store it at our warehouse. Well, if you want to be on the Prime and get, this listing, we're going to charge this fee, right? And everybody's now like, man, I was doing so well on Amazon. I grew my stuff 60 million. Well, you see all these guys doing 100 million a year on Amazon wanting to get off the platform, go to Shopify, go to TikTok, because it's just, becoming very territorial with Amazon. And what they're doing is they'll kick you off and build their own product now. It's a little monopolistic.
Yeah.
Right? But that's what happens when these companies, they'll get you in the beginning. It's great. Everybody can benefit. But eventually the tides turn when they're ready to pull the, profit lever for all the investors.
So you mentioned you guys are also building with AI, right?
Yep. So we're leveraging AI right now. That's part of the future. It's not to replace anybody's jobs, but, it saves you time, right? AI bots. We used to have to do manual outreach for creators. Now there's an AI tool for it. We used to have to, manually go through and review every little detail about a site, do this, do that. Well, there's an AI tool for it now. I think it's just it's not going to overtake anything at the moment, but what's happening currently is just, a much easier form of getting things done. So you can expedite the process dramatically.
Yeah. So using AI then, like specifically how you guys are using it and then what you see in this specific space, like, do you have any forecasts for what AI is going to be in that space?
It's hard to say, and I don't want to find out at the end of the day what it could end up doing. It's a little sketch, but, it's pretty crazy what it can do, right?
Yeah.
Even some of these prompts you do on ChatGPT and stuff, it responds. It's like, what? How did it know all this?
I mean, so it also makes sense for people who are really established to find and now ask guys that are younger for the advice because of like the ability of, young kids using AI now. They're going to grow up with it.
100%.
Dude, I sound like I'm old right now.
Yeah.
I'm like young
I was just
kids.
telling somebody else, we talk about Googling. People are talking about ChatGPTing it. Like ChatGPT that. Like
It's just
eventually
so
you're not
crazy.
going to have the Google. You're just going to have the ChatGPT.
It's like crazy because like at this day and age, like if I go to somebody and they're like in their 50s and I'm like, oh, when I was younger, they're like, dude, what are you talking about?
Man,
But
I don't want to say it.
But but look at today, like you have to look at some kid who's 18 building an agent, whatever you want to call
AI
it now.
agencies.
AI, yeah. And then that's like, for me, that would have been like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, that's so wild.
It is weird how fast stuff is coming
So
out.
like now what's the new like kids are going to start, I see these kids starting agencies and running at 14.
Yeah.
There's like a kid who's doing it at like 12 right now. That's like really big online.
It's mind blowing. I think that, kids are maturing really fast too, just with the world we're in and access to information. It's pretty scary just for that alone. But like people are getting introduced to like real life, scenarios so much earlier. Like I started at 16, that was young, right? But like to your point, people were starting even before that. I couldn't even fathom starting a business at the age of 12, right? But there are kids running e-com stores doing $100K a month at the age of 12, right?
Yeah.
But it's also one of the things that you got to be worried about because of the moral compass, right? At a certain age, you understand, at least for most people, you end up developing, the moral aspect, understanding what right is and what wrong is. Like I've encountered people that are really young in the past and run these drop shipping stores. There's not much, servicing or customer support. And then all of a sudden the whole thing blows up. They're getting chargebacks, all this stuff, and the whole thing crashes because they just pump the sales. Manufacturing can't even keep up with it. And then they're not even communicating with their customers when they're going to get the products. So that's when you run into that risky stuff when, age becomes an issue because they just don't have that moral background to understand maybe I shouldn't, charge people if I can't even fulfill on the product.
Yeah. And then how do you feel that making a lot of money at a young age, like how did you deal with that? Because there's people who they say like they go through stages. Like we've had a couple of guests and they're like, oh, you go through this stage where you want to buy everything. You go through a stage where you don't care anymore. You go through this stage where they're like going through stages,
There's always stages.
What do you like? How did you deal with money and being so young? Because most people who watch this won't have like achieved that much money at that young of an age. Like maybe they make more later, or maybe they, whatever it is. But for you, like that's a unique experience. That's a new thing that's going on. And a lot of people are like, I talk to people like, we're the common people. We're like, dude, I'm like getting this stuff started at like 30 almost. And like everybody else, like these guys are like Chase Chappell are like 21 already have made like 30, 50 grand, 100 grand a month. Like, what is that like? And then how did that affect you? Like maturity and like lifestyle?
I mean, because I'd started so young, a lot of it was gradual too at the same time. So like, the growth in the early stages, like it wasn't like an overnight thing. Like it's already been, nearly 9 years at this point. So you're looking at nearly a decade, right? And now all of this just in the last few years has really been massive scale. So like the first few years was not much, like, maybe 100K a year, but in terms of the scale now, that's like nothing. But at that point, it was super exciting, wasn't much expenses, but a lot of it was being reinvested back into the company, bringing on team members, right? Or you fell at something and lose a lot of cash on it. So a lot of it was just being put into growth, ads, stuff like that. But really in the last 3, years, all of that changed. There's a certain point where, what was coming in, what was going out income was exceeding a lot more than the expenses was, right? So then the traveling started happening, hanging out with the celebrities, doing the jets, doing the cars, doing
building
all that
your
stuff.
brand too, right?
Yeah, and building the brand. Taking the team out on a plane, renting out the entire top floor for a pool party just to celebrate, the company, right? But all that was just being reinvested, and it's fun, it's exciting. But after that, you go back to the grind, and it's like, all right, what's the next stage? How do we go to the next
you're
level?
at 25. I don't think I've ever met anybody at 25 that wasn't in their party stage, to be honest. Like you could be successeful or not. Like
I missed it. I missed the college days.
You
I
missed
didn't go.
it. So you're doing it now. Like you're going to you have to go through it at some point. Like you did it. So it's like, I would be surprised if you weren't in your stage. Cause at 25, I was definitely in my party stage.
Yeah.
And I did not have nearly as much money as you. So like, I can imagine also too, there's people like, obviously you're going to be your lifestyle's gonna be very different. It's like, you don't just go all out. You're kind of more of like controlled. Hey, there's a big event. Like, there's a fight. There's this, there's that, Vegas. And it happens. And then it's not even like you want to party that much. It's like, hey man, we're a vendor. Like, hey, we're going to have this. We're going to cater. We need a vendor here. We've got an event here. We've got this. And then you're just like, dude, it's a schedule that's full. Yeah. And then you realize like 6 out of 8 items are parties and 2 of them are dinners. Like, that's just like, and then it's like, is that how networking happens? Like, is that?
It all comes together at last minute. It's insane. And the schedules are crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun for me because I live to network. That's like, for me, I was like, I don't know if I would find any other way to make $1 million or $10 million or $100 million if I wasn't just networking like wild.
You should launch your event. You doing events yet?
Yeah, so we're working on that. My next thing is I want to be able to like grow, like you have a brand, you help grow brands. I want to help grow brands, but personal brands. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like trying to get to that point where everybody I've already worked with respects the level of like detail that we do for X, Y, and Z. So like we're working on like social boosts and like stuff like that. I would love to talk to you about on another time. 100%. And that being said, like, what is your like just typical business advice. Like for somebody like me, I'm growing a podcast. Like I want to get into e-com. I want to grow a store because I just think I just feel like it's such a blue ocean right now.
Yeah.
What's your advice for someone in my position, and also just for people that are listening, like the audience, you can tell them like, what's your life advice and what's your business advice?
You got to educate yourself for one. You don't want to like learning is one thing, but like spending a lot of money and doing it on your own is another thing. So you can learn through spending and trial and error, which one of the best ways to learn is just through failure, which costs a lot of money and a lot of time too, because you failed throughout the entire year. Okay, next year, I know what to do now. Now you're 2 years in. Whereas like the education side of it is, okay, I'm just going to learn everything I need to in advance, right? And so what you do is you pay somebody or you enroll, educate, and just get the blueprint for what steps need to be taken. Save a lot of money, cut down on the time, and then just, expedite the entire process. So I would just double down on making sure that you know 100% what it is that needs to happen with, if you're going to launch a Shopify store, is the website good enough? Do we just upload a basic product, or do we need to brand it? Do we need to have the mission behind it? Do we need to have all the conversion rate tactics on there? Should we have a drawer card? Should we take them to a cart page? Should we have 5 images or 7 images for the product? Do we need lifestyle? Do we need white background image shots? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. You should ask, why did we do this on pretty much everything you do until you know the reason you do it. You just put it up and say, hey, we're going to make $1 million. This is a great idea. Well, it might be a great idea. It could make $1 million. But the audience itself, when you're funneling, tens of thousands of people to a website, they're going to react differently to each, right? So you got to make sure that, there's tactics you put in place, you automate the process, you make it, high converting, and then you say, okay, what's the next step? Is TikTok Shop right for us? Well, TikTok Shop requires you to ship out in 2 days. Do we have that fulfillment? No. All right, let's go to Facebook ads. Are we doing a pre-order, drops? Should we capture SMS, email? So these are all the things you have to figure out ahead of time. And if you can put them in place, then you're going to save a lot of money and make a lot more whenever you start scaling on Facebook and TikTok, shop ads. So if you can just get the roadmap in advance, work with somebody who understands what they're doing, and guide through the process with you, you can expedite it, understand it, execute, and release. And all of this is a big creative game right now. The more creative you are, the better it's going to be.
And like when people are learning, where do you, obviously you've got the university, like what do you guys have? What do you suggest? Like also, there's also YouTube resources for free.
Yeah, there's free content on YouTube. One of the biggest things that I used when I was learning is I would go to developers.facebook.com because I found out that Facebook has to notify you of algorithm changes, updates to their platform to the developers first so they could prepare their apps and release for launch or update their apps. So they'd have to get all the notes before Facebook updated or Apple updates or TikTok updates. So you get these developer notes, just enroll and say you have an app. Now you have all the insider information coming in a few months in advance. Then you can prepare, oh, this is going away. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this anymore. We can switch ahead of time. So that way, you don't get caught with your pants down and be in a situation that you don't want to be in. So you can learn this stuff ahead of time. And that was one way I was doing it. And then you have YouTube, which is free content. TikTok, which is great. It's becoming a search platform as well. You can search on there. So you just got to know where to source the information. And too many people get caught up listening to too many different people because everybody has the opposite opinion of each other. You need to stick to one singular source of truth. That's either logic, which is through developers, right? Facebook or TikTok, if you want to learn ads, that's always going to have the true information, the facts. And then you have, the person who knows the strategies and the creative aspect and who you're going to listen to. You need to pick one person and just go with it. And if it doesn't work, maybe you'll, find a different individual. But if you're listening to too many people, you'll go into analysis by paralysis. And that's a horrible state to be in. Everybody's saying the opposite thing. And you don't know what to do and you feel confused more than you were before entering the space.
So let's say just take us through a simple progression. If
you had a store, let's say you're doing $5,000 a month right now, you got a little bit figured out, but you don't know how to go to 20 or 100. First thing I do is I go to your website. There's probably 20 to 50 different things you're probably not doing. You go through, optimize it, clean it up, update the images, add some apps, get SMS involved, email, get the automations going. Bundles, we'll do bundles because it increases AOVs, makes more profit. Get things on subscription because we know if we acquire a customer and then they're on a subscription, you're making more money. So once you have all that, now every traffic and person coming to your website is infinitely worth more than they were before. So once we fix the website, we go, okay, is your product built for TikTok Shop? No. Facebook ads makes more sense because it's more consistent. So website's done. Now let's get your Facebook ads right. All right, you need all new creatives. Let's put a swipe file together, go over what creatives you need, what works, founder's story, product comparison, features and benefits, review-based ad, launch. We have 5 different ads on Facebook. Let's start with this budget. Figure out our break-even ROAS. What's profitable over a certain number. If it's profitable, let's scale so we can make more money. Now we're at 20, 50K. And then what? Let's go do some viral videos on TikTok. Add another 20K a month. Now let's do TikTok Shop. We're at 100K a month. Right? And then from there, it's like, how do we get to 500? It's really just about spending more. Or how do we get more traffic? Creators, affiliates. Let's do some organic. Let's launch Google ads, YouTube ads. And now you have more distribution channels. You don't do everything at once. You do it step by step by step.
So I used to follow Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. And then he used to talk about a lot of this stuff too. And he's an awesome guy. And I was, one of the things that I noticed, there's a couple other guys, I forgot their names. I listened to a couple of podcasts and they were like, it's easier to buy an existing store and scale it than it is to start one from scratch.
Oh, for sure.
Same thing because of SEO and all of these other things.
All the hard work's done.
What does that mean for you guys? Like, do you guys buy brands? Are you guys moving into like purchasing a portfolio of stores and growing
So we're looking to get into the venture studio model, which is essentially both taking equity in other people's companies, but building our own portfolio of brands. Because we have the experience, we know how to do it. We can spin up our own stores pretty quickly, knowing what works and what doesn't. But for somebody who doesn't have that, internal knowledge, it would make more sense to probably buy the company, then hire an expert to help coach you to get to the next level, right? You have the cash flow immediately. So we're getting into the venture space, going to grow our own brands and help other people. So that's like, next phase. That's been a long-term goal, is being able to, help brands not have a fee. We just take, a cut of the business and then, paper it all up, sell it for multiple.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've seen that, and that's like some next level stuff, dude. We got to talk about that at some point. But with that being said, so if people want to find you, learn more, do you want to just do, give them where to find you at?
Yeah. At Real Chase Chappell on Instagram. You can DM me podcast if you want to learn more.
Yeah. All right, guys. And then at the same time too, he's also got the training, all of that, all the university information you can find there. And then we'll definitely be doing some more collaboration. Definitely want to get you on our panel. We're going to have like a panel of people, and
that'd be sweet.
Like, that way we could just like funnel our people to just like learn from you guys.
Yeah, let's do it.
So that'll be sick. That's something we're going to do soon. So guys, with that being said, we're done with Kickin' Ass Taking Names podcast with Chase Chappell. We'll talk to you soon.